Shark Tale, one of DreamWorks' most fascinating movies, but it had an even more fascinating production history. And I recently did a video where I looked at all of these production pieces that I had acquired that give us a sort of rough outline of the movie. Not necessarily a script, but through deciphering these pages, we were able to piece together what the original darker version of the movie was like. So if you haven't watched that video, you should pause this one and do so because it's really fun. And I just wanted to say thank you for all of the amazing kind words and comments I got on that video. This one was a real passion project of mine. Shark Tale is a movie that I grew up with when I was a kid, and I just really wanted to learn about its production. So I looked through all these papers, and we just kind of translated them together. But it took a long time to make that video, and I was not expecting it to get the reception that it did. I thought the internet hated this movie. I mean, in the 2010s, people were just not big Shark Tale fans. So I wanted to highlight some of the fun comments here, and also, boom, we have another previously unseen Shark Tale piece of artwork here. It's Bonnie and Ernie, the two Rastafarian jellyfish, and they look to be playing a game of Dance Dance Revolution amidst a crowd of onlookers. Now, where would this have been in the movie? I have a couple of ideas. It could have been in place of the video game they do play in the film. If you recall, the two of them do play a fighting game when they go, it's XX circle square, not circle square X. Very funny scene. I always feel that way when figuring out fighting game combos, but I think this actually may have been originally intended for the penthouse introduction scene, because in that scene where they're playing the game, there's not a big crowd of people, but in the penthouse scene, there's a big party going on, and in the final film, the two of them are DJs at that party. So maybe instead of being DJs, they would have been playing this game, and there would have been a little gag. But it's a very cool drawing. I'm really happy to add this to the collection, and I just want to give you a little bit of visual flair, something to look at, while I read some of these cool comments. So I thought this one was interesting. User JoeyMo4964, hopefully I get all these names right, apologies if I'm a bit off, says, interestingly, the idea of heavy pollution causing sea life to rapidly mutate and anthropomorphize while building their culture off of human trash is the basis of Splatoon. Wow, that is very interesting. The Splatoon video games from Nintendo seemingly lining up with that original version of Shark Tale. Now, if you'll recall in that video, I discussed how the fish originally in the Shark Tale world were not supposed to build their own buildings and structures, but instead just use whatever humans threw and polluted into the ocean. And it kind of had this interesting theme of pollution behind it. So I don't know if there's any actual connection between Nintendo and DreamWorks. I seriously doubt that anyone that worked on Shark Tale went and worked on Splatoon. I think it's just a coincidence. When you're developing a world of fish, you want to talk about pollution. It's an ever-pressing theme, and you're going to come up with the idea of human trash playing a part in the fish ecosystem. But it is an interesting coincidence nonetheless. I will give you that. Okay, next up from, I like this username, Nunya619 says, I'm guessing Angie was originally named Bridget as a reference to the movie character Bridget from Bridget Jones' Diary, both of which were played by the same actress. Okay, so this is in reference to one of the papers here. The story outline paper, the one that infamously was dated September 10th, 2001, it notes that Bridget was now being called Angel. And then in the final cut of the movie, Angel was retitled to Angie. So I guess Bridget being the placeholder name was a reference to Bridget Jones' Diary. I don't know why I didn't make that connection. That's probably Renee Zellweger's one of her best-known film series. Of course, that character was always meant to be her. How great is that? Okay, what else do we have here? Oh boy, user Peyton Socia Ohagen2543. Hope I got that right. Says, I looked at the sheet, and it looks like the writing said Polly loses Lola to Oscar, which goes back to what you said, that Oscar steals Lola from Polly or Sykes. So that comment is referencing this page here, where I didn't know what this word was supposed to be because of the cursive handwriting, and they believe it is Polly loses Lola to Oscar. Now, in the final version of the film, Polly the eel became Sykes the pufferfish, and he was intended to have Lola as a girlfriend, and Oscar would have won Lola over from Sykes as he became more and more famous. So that does seem to be what the text says, so thank you for solving that mystery. Now, what is interesting is that Polly and Sykes were actually both in the movie at some point. It's just that all of Polly the Eel's character was put into Sykes. Shark Tale originally was a direct parody of a mafia movie, and it was intended to have a huge cast of characters, just like classic mob movies, to kind of give you the idea that the whole city was connected to the mob. But in the end, they ended up trimming that down significantly, and Polly was one of the big characters to kind of get the boot, but also be formed into Sykes. Okay, next comment. So Spectrum Analysis commented, I think the mystery word on Sleeps with the Fishes page might be section. Okay, so that is in reference to this page here, where it has the original monologue of the movie, The City Never Sleeps, There Are a Million Stories, this is one, and it says, body settles into the bottom of industrial, and then they said it's section, parentheses, outskirts of the city, industrial section. I think that's true. I think that's supposed to be an S and an E. The cursive was just, I couldn't tell. Hey, I haven't done full cursive since 4th grade. I always forget that the S is really funky looking. It's just like this little thing. But yeah, industrial section. Another mystery solved. Yay. Okay, last comment is from Mosk Hotel, who mentions that the Shark Tale video game features a mutant eel character that may be connected to Polly. So I looked at the game here, and it's very possible that this eel model was intended to be used for Polly. Remember that stuff like video games, and especially toys, are made years in advance before the movie, and often cut characters, cut storylines, or presence in games and toys. The Shark Tale video game, actually the PC version of the game, features a deleted scene where Oscar gets evicted from his apartment. It was the original opening of the movie. So yeah, I would not be surprised if this eel was the model made for Polly, and at the last second they just kind of had to cut it, and they decided to reuse it as a boss fight. It is also interesting they call it a mutant eel. Maybe that is a holdover from the original plotline where the pollutants were mutating some of the fish. Who knows, but it is interesting, very interesting, as all of this stuff is. Okay, I'm going to close this out on one last thing, and my last piece of paper I've acquired for the Shark Tale Papers collection, and that is these finished shots here of the whale wash. Well, I really shouldn't say finished because they don't have any texturing. It's just the plain model. But what is interesting is that the whale wash was developed as being fully functional. Yes, there was an actual architectural blueprint for this thing that, if assembled, could really wash whales. If you listen to the commentary, they were very proud that the whale wash was fully functional. And if you have the original DVD release of Shark Tale and not the later Blu-ray, these blueprints are actually a bonus feature. You can view them in their entirety. So how about that? Now, what does make this piece so cool and why I really wanted it for the collection is, you may recall, in the previous Papers video, we did have a look at the very early version of the whale wash. Now, back in this version of the storyline, the fish didn't build things, so rather than construct their own intricate whale wash that is fully functional to cleaning whales, we have a car wash, a 1950s style, we call it mid-century design car wash, that was reused and repurposed into a whale wash. So here we have the full creation process of how we had the human car wash being used to clean the whales, to finally the final version where they have a purpose-built whale wash. How about that? Pretty interesting. And another weird thing, I was watching Turbo the other night, yes, the snail movie, at like midnight, because I've lost control of my life, clearly, but I noticed in that movie, in the Starlight Plaza, which is where the film takes place, this little strip mall, there was a a car wash across the street, now I'm getting all confused, that looks eerily similar to this piece of concept artwork. It's very mid-century, and it's got triangular elements of design. It's not the exact one, but it does look similar, almost like a hybrid between these two. So I was doing a bit of research, and I found this really interesting article from the San Fernando Valley blog, I'll link it in the description, called The Filming Locations of Turbo. And it makes you realize that, Turbo's a movie I have not given a lot of thought into. It's not that great of a film. But the setting of the San Fernando Valley was so thoroughly researched that every location in Turbo is based off of a real location in the San Fernando Valley of California, which is where DreamWorks' headquarters is located, very nearby in Glendale. So a lot of Turbo was modeled off of real places that the employees of DreamWorks would see when driving to work. And that got me thinking, maybe the DreamWorks obsession with car washes has to do with those classic 1950s historic car washes that are still preserved in the LA Valley. Because it is odd that we have a classic retro car wash in Shark Tale and in Turbo. And this piece of artwork, it almost looks like both of them. So maybe they were both roughly based off of the same exact car wash on the way to DreamWorks. I don't know. I was kind of hoping that it would be the exact one. Wouldn't it be neat if this concept artwork for Shark Slayer did end up getting used in Turbo, but it's a little different. Either way, cue the Dr. Doofenshmirtz meme. If I had a nickel, every DreamWorks movie had a 1950s mid-century style car wash, well, it'd be pretty weird that I'd have 2 nickels. So that's all I've got for today. That is the last of the Shark Tale files for now, but I'm always very interested in collecting Shark Tale, so if anything else comes up in my future, of course, I'm going to feature it here. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a happily ever after.